Yeah, check 1 2. Mic 1 2 1 2. 1 2 1 2. Yeah, 1 1 2.
Yes, we can hear you.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your presence. You have been invited to this media and stakeholder engagement session with the chairpersons of Parliament's finance cluster following the presentation of the budget speech by the Minister of Finance, which follows the State of the Nation address. As we know, the role of the budget in terms of supporting the plans that have been presented by the President, which should be executed by various departments. There is a role of Parliament following that presentation in terms of the processing and the approval of that particular budget. So that is the reason why we're here, for the chairpersons to take you through the process that their committees will undertake, but also to give you, on behalf of the committees, their views in terms of consistent with their constitutional mandate of oversight regarding the details of that particular budget as presented by the Minister. I'm sure you will realize that those who have been attending these meetings, we have been conducting them either outside the hotel or at the Good Hope Chamber, but today we are in an unfamiliar venue for some of you, the Library of Parliament, and it is deliberate because this is a very important national heritage resource that plays a very critical role in Parliament's ability, or parliamentarians' ability, to ensure oversight, lawmaking, and public participation. So it ensures that members of Parliament have got the resource on which to base their lawmaking to ensure that it is evidence-based. I think the microphone is getting louder and louder as I'm trying to put it quite a little bit away from my mouth. It is a very old library. It is almost as old as the first building that was built for Parliament, what you call the Parliament of the Republic of South Africa today. It started as the legislature of the Cape Colony. So this library was created in 1885. It is 141 years this year. Like I said, it's a very important historical, valuable national heritage resource, and it's one of the 6 what we call national deposit libraries in the country, meaning that in terms of the National Legal Deposit Act in South Africa, for every publication, intellectual or otherwise, every publication that is being created in South Africa, a copy of that must be deposited in this particular library. So, so they are entitled to receive those copies that are produced in South Africa. The other libraries, you know, they are the national libraries of branches. One is in Pretoria, the other one is in Cape Town, and then you've got Mangaung Public Library, you've got Pietermaritzburg Public Library, and then you've got the Video and Sound Archives Library. So those are very important. We've got here about 120,000 volumes, and then we've got access to leading databases in the country. So it is a very important, like I said, a valuable national heritage resource, and that is the reason why we want to cast some spotlight on it, so that the people of South Africa know that there is such an important resource here in Parliament. Now, There are 4 chairpersons that will be engaging with you, representing the 4 finance committees in Parliament. We are going to take them in this particular order. The first one will be Dr. Maswanganyi, who is the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Finance. Then we've got Honorable Chairperson Ndlovu, who is chairperson of the Select Committee on Finance. We've got Dr. Maimane, who is the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Appropriations. And the last one to present will be Honorable Zibi, who is the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. Like I said, they will deal with a wide range of issues relating to the budget, oversight, and in terms of the committee's role in the processing of the budget. So you are welcome, members of the media and stakeholders. I'm confident that after this session, you will also have an opportunity to engage one-on-one with the chairpersons that are here, as we always do. Thank you very much, Dr. Maswanganyi, the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Mthabo, Program Director. Good morning to my colleagues, the chairpersons, Dr. Maimane, Honorable Zibi, and Honorable Ndlovu, members of the media, and also the entire parliamentary communications team, and guests. I won't be dealing with all issues in budget. I will focus more on infrastructure, which is an area that I've been requested to look at. Let me say, before I get into that this media briefing takes place against the background of war in the Middle East, sparked by the US and Israel, which attacked Iran. Let me reiterate the statement of the ANC to say that the intensification of hostilities carries serious humanitarian, diplomatic, and economic consequences. This war has a direct impact on the Asian, African, and the South African economies in particular. The Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important routes on earth, is now facing disruption. Nearly 1/5 or 20 million barrels of oil per day of the world's oil supply passes through this strait. Any tension or disruption in the Strait of Hormuz can affect oil prices worldwide, influencing transport costs, industries, and household expenses. We condemn the violations of international law, because this conflict is going to have serious impact on our budget that has been tabled last week. Today we live in the global village. We can't be here and say we are not worried about what's happening there. We are very worried, because it has got a direct impact on our economy and the countries that we trade with. We welcome the progressive budget tabled by the Minister of Finance, Honorable Enoch Godongwana. The 2026 budget represents a turning point After years of fiscal pressure, sovereign downgrades, and slow growth, South Africa has reached a critical milestone. Public debt is stabilizing. Borrowing costs are easing. Confidence is improving. But let me be clear, fiscal stability means nothing if it does not translate into jobs. This budget recognizes that the real test of recovery is whether South Africa can find work, whether businesses can respond, and whether communities can see tangible improvements in infrastructure and services. That is why infrastructure investment sits at the center of this budget. The government plans to invest 1.07 trillion in infrastructure over the medium term. This is not a minor adjustment. It is a shift towards growth-enhancing investment. Of this amount, 577.4 billion will be invested by public entities, 217.8 billion by provinces, 205.7 billion by municipalities. This scale of investment signals that we are serious about rebuilding the productive capacity of the economy. In 2025, the government successfully raised 11.8 billion through an infrastructure bond. That is not just a financing instrument. It is a vote of confidence by investors in South Africa's reform path. Infrastructure creates jobs immediately in construction, engineering, and maintenance. But more importantly, it creates the conditions for sustainable job creation. When rail works, exporters grow. When electricity is reliable, factories expand. When water systems function, industrial zones attract investment. Without infrastructure, growth is stalled. Without growth, jobs cannot be created. This budget understands that reality. The establishment of the credit guarantee vehicle supported by National Treasury and the World Bank will accelerate investment in transmission infrastructure, one of the most critical bottlenecks in expanding electricity supply. South Africa cannot grow if its ports and railways do not function. Ports and railways are very critical for the growth of the economy. Hence, an investment in this infrastructure is very important. Progress in freight rail, open access arrangements, and private sector participation marks a decisive step forward. PRASA's Corridor Recovery Program aimed to increase annual passenger trips from 77 million to between 250 and 450 million over the medium term. Reliable commuter rail reduces transport costs for workers and improves access to economic opportunities. Logistics reform is not an abstract policy. It affects the daily lives of working South Africans. Another area which is very important for when it deals with infrastructure is local government. The allocation of 27.7 billion over the medium term for metro trading services reform is not cosmetic. It represents a structural intervention, and we have seen that with the water crisis in Johannesburg. What we are looking at now in Johannesburg is what the rural people are facing daily. It's just that now it is at the metro level. But the people in rural areas face that kind of a situation. And now that there is that attention, we hope that the attention that the metros are getting will equally be given to the rural communities. The revenue collected for water and electricity must be reinvested into maintaining and expanding those systems. We also welcome the concept of triple P, private-public or public-private partnership, which will bring the much needed resources from the public, from the private sector, be it in rail, be it in ports, be it in energy and other areas where infrastructure is provided. It's not the first time that private sector is involved in investing in a public infrastructure. Almost all the toll roads that we have in South Africa have been built through the system of triple P, or what we call BOT. You build, you operate, and you transfer to the owner. Because private sector is not given the ownership of the property. They are given what we call a concession, that you will operate based on the following conditions. So, for South Africa to work, we have to attract capital from the international community. Equally, we also have to get our private sector, which has lots of capital, to invest in the infrastructure development. Infrastructure allocations must translate into projects on the ground and must translate into employment. We believe that this 1 trillion plus that has been presented will create jobs to make sure that the infrastructure rollout should be labor intensive. We are not saying that we should not use machines in this era, but let's try by all means to get people on the ground to roll out this project. If implemented with discipline and agency, it can restore investor confidence, improve service delivery, and most importantly, create sustainable employment. I reaffirm that infrastructure-led growth remains the most important available to reduce unemployment, more especially amongst young people. Youth unemployment in South Africa is very high. And as public representatives, we are very worried about youth unemployment. So we also are worried that when we vote for budget, departments and some municipalities underspend. We have got a serious problem in that regard, because money which is not spent is denying jobs, to much needed jobs, to young people who are out there. There are many graduates who are unemployed. So we, as the parliamentary committee or committees seated here, will make sure that we play our oversight role to make sure that the money is spent for the purpose that it has been voted for. And there must be value for that money on the ground. Thanks very much, Program Director.
Thank you very much, Dr. Masongani. To deal with the role of the National Council of Provinces in the budget process, and also the allocation to the local government, which we are aware is where the core phase of service delivery. The chairperson of the Select Committee on Finance, Honorable Ndlovu.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to our media house, the fellow South Africans, my colleagues, chairpersons of the portfolio committees, Honorable Zibi, Dr. Musumaiman, and Dr. Masongai. As the Select Committee on Finance of the NCOP, we have now entered one of the most critical phases of the Parliament budget process: the consideration and adoption of the fiscal framework and revenue proposal. Now, in response to the tabling of progressive budget, as alluded by Honorable Dr. Masongai, by the Minister of Finance last week, yesterday, I wish to address two central issues today. One is the importance of meaningful public participation in the drafting of our fiscal framework report in line with the Money Bill Amendment Procedures and Related Matters Act. Two, the critical question on revenue allocation of the local government sphere. As the NCOP exists to ensure that provincial interests are represented in the national sphere of government. When we consider the fiscal framework as the Select Committee on Finance, we do so not in abstraction, but with full awareness that its implications are felt in provinces, districts, and municipalities. The executive arm of the state may prepare and table the budget through the Minister of Finance in accordance with the Constitution and applicable legislative frameworks, such as the Money Bill Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act, as I indicated earlier. But Parliament, members, is the final arbiter over the national budget. The importance of the public participation. The budget is not merely a financial document. It reflects our national priorities. It tells us who and what the state values. Therefore, it cannot be shaped by the executive alone, nor can it be shaped by Parliament alone. Public participation is not a procedural formality, but a constitutional imperative. As we meet here today, the Finance Committee has 12 days to table the fiscal framework and revenue proposal report, which must be informed by greater inputs from civil society formation, the businesses, and the labor. You have the labor organizations, and that has to do the inputs, and the ordinary South Africans. And we also urge our South Africans to make sure that they make their own inputs wherever they are. As the chairperson of the Select Committee of Finance, I will call upon communities in rural provinces like where I come from, Limpopo, the small towns, also from Tabazimbi, where I come from, and other areas, especially rural areas, and underdeveloped districts, to make their voices heard no later than Monday the 9th, because that will be the last day of the submission of the proposals. Too often, fiscal debates are dominated by a small fraction of urban and well-resourced stakeholders. Communities at rural areas, the business communities, they don't participate, and at the end of the day, they will not know what is the budget all about and what is it that they need to do. But there is an advert that has went out as we speak. Yet the lived reality of poverty, unemployment, failing infrastructure, and weak municipality capacity are most acute in rural provinces. The fiscal framework sets the macroeconomic envelope, revenue projections, expenditure, ceilings, borrowing levels. But behind these technical terms, there are questions to be asked. Will there be adequate funding for basic services? That's number one. Two, will provinces receive sufficient equitable shares to sustain health and education? Three, will municipalities have the resources to fix water system and maintain roads? Those are the critical three questions. Public participation allows us as Parliament to ensure that these questions are answered not only in Pretoria, but in every province, district, and local municipalities. Revenue allocation to the local sphere of government. Let me now turn to the second issues, honorable members and the chair, and also our media houses. Revenue allocations to local government. Minister Godongwana's budget outlined the vertical division of revenue amongst national, provincial, and local government. While we acknowledge the severe fiscal constraints facing the country, including slow economic growth, high debt service cost, and competing expenditure pressures, we must interrogate whether the local sphere is adequately funded relative to its constitutional mandate. Municipalities are at the coalface of service delivery. They provide water and sanitation, refuse removal, electricity distribution, local roads, and community infrastructures. Yet many of our municipalities, particularly in rural provinces, I must emphasize, particularly in rural provinces, are structurally unable to generate sufficient own revenue. Like you have lots of informal settlement whereby they will not be able to generate revenue. Unlike metropolitan municipalities, rural municipalities often have limited industrial or commercial activities, high level of indigent or a small property tax base, and vast geographic areas with scattered settlement. As a result, they rely heavily on intergovernmental transfers, including the equitable shares and conditional grant. From the perspective of the NCOP, we must ask 3 questions again. Are these transfers sufficient? Are they predictable and sustainable? Do they take into account the developmental backlogs in historical underdevelopment provinces? Sorry. At a personal and political level, I remain guided by my organization, the African National Congress, historic commitment to developmental local government. In the movement, we believe that local government must be empowered, not weakened, because it is closest to the people. If municipalities collapse financially, it is the poorest household who suffers first. It is not sufficient to say municipalities must improve revenue collections, when in reality, many residents are unemployed and cannot afford to pay. At the same time, we will continue to insist on accountability, good governance, and consequence management. Increased allocation must go hand in hand with improved financial management and oversight at municipal level. Developmental funding and accountability are not mutually exclusive. They are complementary. Minister Godongwana has emphasized fiscal consolidation and debt stabilization, and we reiterate the call. As a committee, we understand the importance of macroeconomic stability. We are mindful of the fact that unsustainable debt could ultimately crowd out social and developmental spending to the detriment of the poor. However, fiscal consolidation must not undermine the constitutional mandate of local government. The challenge before us is to strike a careful balance in protecting the fiscus, stabilizing debt, and at the same time deepening developmental impact where it matters most, in communities. The NCOP is unlikely positioned to assess whether this balance is appropriately struck because we are directly accountable to the provinces. In conclusion, Program Director, the coming 12 days are critical. The fiscal framework is the foundation upon which the entire budget architecture rests. We call upon South Africans, especially those in rural and underrepresented provinces, to participate actively in our process as outlined earlier. Please, I'm reiterating this. As chairperson of the Select Committee, I commit that we will listen, we will interrogate the numbers, we will represent provincial interests robustly, and we will ensure that the voice of local government is not marginalized. Our democracy demands nothing less. Chairperson, the Program Director, thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson Ndlovu. The Chairperson of the Standing Committee on Appropriations, Dr. Maimane, will deal with social wage, debt stabilization, and economic growth. Thank you very much, Dr. Maimane.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for making this particular briefing. I think to our fellow chairpersons, it is undeniable that this year's budget responds to the questions that are posed before it. And the fundamental question that South Africa has to confront is the levels of unemployment. 6 out of 10 adults do not work in this country. The harsh reality of it is that citizens are still relatively poor, with more than half of the citizens living below the upper poverty line. There can be no debate about the fact that South Africa's economy and wealth is largely concentrated, with a few people being able to participate in the fullness of wealth and the majority living in poverty. There's no debate about the fact that this budget also takes place within a geopolitical instability, as Dr. Maswanganye has already raised the point about the war that is taking place, or the conflict that is taking place. It will have profound consequences on all South Africans. And I want to upfront say, we must all, those peace-loving citizens who are Democrats, condemn attacks on from one nation onto another. It is a genuine, in a world with suppressed GDP growth, let alone that, the importance of sovereignty of nations must always be upheld. And then lastly, this budget takes place well within climate change as part of the forefront drivers, given disaster management that is taking place, that has to take place in South Africa. So these incidents are themes within which the budget occurs. It would be amiss of me not to acknowledge the fact that there are some incredible green shoots that are expressed in the budget. Of course, inflation is stabilizing at 3.6%. This budget presents a primary budget surplus, and there's no doubt about the fact that South Africa being removed from grey listing means it gives an opportunity for rating agencies to move us from uninvestable status to a place where South Africa can invest. Because we can all worry about the question of GDP growth. What we should not ignore is the fact that there is a question about gross capital formation, which is the rate of investment. So whilst our stock exchange has performed extraordinarily well, it also becomes important that we see that translated into investment into South Africa. So these things are absolutely important. It is also important that we highlight the need for more fiscal discipline. This is not austerity or anything like that. It's about ensuring that for every rand that the South African taxpayer invests, that all of it goes towards the benefit of the citizens or its intended purposes. So where there are wasteful and fruitless expenditure, it is simply an assault against a very, very difficult position. So I acknowledge the green shoots against the backdrop that says we have made a great start, but South Africa still has a very long way to go. I think we must not fool ourselves into the belief that because we're seeing a primary budget surplus, that all is well. We have a long, long, long way to go to catch up with where South Africa is at. And so in response to the questions that are put before me, I want to start off with the question of growth so that we recognize the time. The global outlook for growth is sitting at 2.6%. South Africa's, Sub-Saharan Africa is sitting at 4.3% GDP growth in the next year. South Africa is projecting at 1.6%, which means whilst many of the factors that we look at are exogenous, there's still some internal issues that we've got to do to match the sub-Saharan growth. The problem isn't everywhere else. We've got to look deep at the mirror and ask the question as to where we are. And so there's some key issues. There must be an increased, as a portfolio committee and a standing committee on appropriations, we've been to India to look at how do you move poor people to a middle class, because that is the fundamental organizing question for South Africa, which is how do you move people from the lower quintiles to the middle quintiles as far as income is concerned. And one of the key areas you look at is investment in key sectors, of which one of them is manufacturing. If you make it in South Africa, it must be consumed in South Africa and be invested in the rest of the continent. So that begins the first question. Dr. Maswanganye has spent a lot of time speaking about infrastructure investment, particularly in the transport sector. There can be no denial about the fact that the South African worker would be better served if they were able to get reliable transport to get to and from work. It means disposable income is available for people to be able to spend. There's no the further question is, how do we make sure that labor absorption is at the forefront of that? So ensuring that whatever infrastructure, whatever programs we put in place are able to invest and allow for people to be able to come onto the labor market. So to that effect, you have to focus, and this is what as the Standing Committee on Appropriations will be looking at, is what are the key expenditure items. On the first is I want to look at this issue of education. If you don't invest in your skills base as a country, it makes it harder for economies, particularly the tertiary aspect of the economy, to be able to be labor absorbing. So some key areas are about, whilst I welcome the minister's investment, the majority of that investment will go into employment of teachers in and of that sense, and that's an important thing because it helps manage classroom sizes, particularly in quintile 1, 2, and 3 communities or schooling, but it's still not enough. We have to invest in infrastructure that builds libraries. We have to invest in infrastructure that ensures that for young South Africans, maths and science is available for them. Because if we fail at that task, it means that our young people, regardless of, we can lament all day to say youth are unemployed, but they become further unemployable. And secondly, they have no capability of being able to go further into tertiary education and compete with citizens from all over the world. And therefore, education spending, whilst it becomes a significant component of the social wage, between health and education, that constitutes 77% of the 61% of the social wage. So these are significant budget items. The expenditure thereof must be directed to productive assets. The second is, no one is going to invest in an economy that is unsafe, and so it's important to acknowledge the 1 billion rands investment into crime and helping with police, but I want to argue strongly. I know it's a very popular thing to say, send the army, send the army, send the army, but what the army doesn't do, it doesn't police murder. And I want that point to sink in. Because ultimately, all the army can do is tactically give police an opportunity to be able to catch up, but it isn't a fundamental solution to addressing the fact that 74 South Africans are being murdered every day in the last quarter. It doesn't address the fact that conviction rates, as far as murder convictions is concerned, are 1 in 5. So we will be looking at budget allocation and increasing the number of headcounts in police, making sure that we can employ more detectives, and ultimately make sure South Africa is a safe place to invest in. There's no denial about the fact that the ratio of doctor to patient ratio needs to be improved, and so the investment in healthcare, whilst NHI has been deferred, means that we have to get more doctors coming online. But I want to here at this point underscore this question about why Tembisa is an insult. When people loot resources at a hospital, and it seems like there's a continuation. When I went to hospitals like Freire, as a committee we went and spent time, infrastructure decay, there seems to be some genuine challenges in the healthcare sector. Every rand that is spent must deliver value. Therefore, those who are stealing resources from people are actually putting citizens' lives at risk. And talk about the social wage all you like. The fact is, a citizen that goes to Tembisa and cannot find cannot find oxygen, cannot find a bed. People don't prefer to sleep on the floor because they feel like it. The fact of the matter is that when the hospital has an investment in those beds, the harsh reality and the consequence of that issue means that ultimately citizens are being put at absolute risk. So corruption has a premium in this country, and it must be dealt with effectively. That's why we built the appropriate courts, and we must ensure that the criminal justice system deals with it. On the special appropriation, which is another bill that was tabled on the table, which deals with some of these expenditure, we will be looking quite closely at the bailout that goes to Sentech. Now, for us fundamentally, I ask the question whether it's a choice between SABC and Sentech. And therefore, we will be looking at understanding the fact that the public broadcaster obviously needs to be funded adequately going into an election year if we are going to deliver on the mandate of making sure that when citizens exercise a choice at the end of the year, they do so knowing that ultimately all the information is available before them. what needs to be cut in order to be able to fund. And this is the question about what expenditure is important. We hold the absolute view that through TARS, we will be looking at some of the SOEs that are not delivering. We will be looking at ensuring that there are cuts to certain agencies. Government has got an agency for everything, and in all reality, the agencies don't deliver much. And I want to reiterate the point. If you are going to increase not only the 1 billion rands in expenditure in terms of security, you are going to have to halve the size of the executive so that you don't end up with deputy ministers coming before commission saying, we're still unclear about what our job is. Yet that's a 4 billion rands expenditure that could quite adequately be deployed towards making sure citizens are safe. I close with the welcome that debt is stabilizing. Debt is no longer the fastest growing item in the budget. Debt, if you look at it in its peaking, it means that it will become the third budget item, the third in terms of ranking of expenditure. This is an important achievement that we need to get right. That means that had it not been for such high levels of debt, I think we could move from a primary budget surplus to a main budget surplus, but that's still a long way away. And so as debt peaks and stabilizes, what South Africa needs to focus on, if it's going to reduce the size of debt relative to GDP, is to actually increase its own GDP output. And GDP in its fundamental sense is about what you make that people want to buy so that you can send it off. So as I've highlighted today, if we focus critically on manufacturing, increasing gross capital formation, making sure the regulatory framework makes it possible for people to invest, South Africa could be a different story. The mission that we should all be engaged with, whatever way you slice and dice the budget, it's got nothing, it's in some ways, it's not just about sin taxes, it's not about online gambling and that taxation. All of these things are still there. But the organizing question that any government that is self-respecting is, how do you move the 18 million grant recipients? How do you move 10 million of them into productive work employment? How do we double GDP from, as it sits at the moment, just over 7 trillion to about 16 trillion rands, which will make it $1 trillion US GDP? That's the question. And so if we can answer that question, then the budget begins to make sense. But we are still a long, long way away from that. And that's why as a committee, we're not only taking the view of what does fiscal discipline look like, we'll also be engaging citizens on the ground with public hearings scheduled for KZN. And those dates will be sent so that we can hear from ordinary people what they want to say about their budget, because it's not yours and my money, it's the citizens' money. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. The last presentation comes from the Honorable Chair for the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, Honorable Chairperson Zibi, to deal with municipal financial management, infrastructure spending, as well as cost reductions. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much. Greetings to everyone who braved a Monday morning. I'm fully cognizant that some of us are Chiefs fans, and this might not be the best Monday to have an occasion like this, but we shall recover and persevere. Greetings to my colleagues from Parliament and the National Council of Provinces, Honorables Ndlovu, Maswanganyi, and Maimane. I also noticed that Honorable Maimane said it's not only yours and my money. It was supposed to be my money. It was supposed to be my money. Good morning and thanks. The tabling of the national budget by the Finance Minister is an important political and economic milestone. It gives South Africans and other key stakeholders globally a better understanding of national priorities as set out by the President in the State of the Nation address. While there appears to be an expectation that the Finance Minister can ensure fiscal responsibility across hundreds of government authorities, this is not founded in how a functioning political system should work. This expectation is unreasonable. Neither the Finance Minister nor the officials of the Treasury are an omnipresence that watches administrative and policy decisions like a hawk to ensure that public funds are allocated and used efficiently. There's simply not enough of them to do that. Our constitutional scheme places a responsibility on every public institution and all public officials, like ourselves here from Parliament, to ensure that South Africans always get best value for their taxes. Parliament has an important role to play in this scheme through the oversight role played by its committees, working together with the Auditor General and other agencies. Too much of the funds allocated by the Finance Minister for social and economic development are lost to ill-considered policy and administrative decisions, poor financial management, and corruption. When this happens, it is not possible to fulfill what the President and Minister of Finance say in their respective policy statements at the beginning of the year. There are three areas that I believe are imperative for Parliament to cast a sharp eye over. These are infrastructure spending, as my colleagues have dealt with, which is across all three spheres of government, including state-owned companies. The second is municipal financial management. The third is cost-saving initiatives across government. So let me deal with each one in turn briefly, and we can have a more substantive discussion in question time. The Finance Minister said that over the medium term, infrastructure spending will remain above R1 trillion, which will be composed of 577 billion expenditure by state-owned companies, 217 billion expenditure by provinces, 205 billion by municipalities. There is also a special appropriation of 5.8 billion for PRASA's rolling stock fleet renewal program. These are significant sums of money. And given how prevalent mismanagement and criminality are, it is important that Parliament, provincial and municipal public accounts committees work very closely with the Auditor General to safeguard them. The Standing Committee on Public Accounts will, as part of the strategy it adopted last year, be focusing on key institutions right across the program. These include national departments, state-owned companies, and some metros and municipalities, which we can talk about more specifically. In this, we are working very closely, as I said, with the AG, and we have a memorandum of agreement with the Special Investigating Unit. I'm happy to provide more insight, as I said, during question time. So let me deal with municipal financial management. While both the President and Finance Minister announced that structural reforms through Operation Vulindlela are beginning to bear fruit, I remain extremely worried about the obstructive role municipal dysfunction is playing in our economic recovery efforts. Not only do municipal public accounts committees appear to be weak and ineffectual, there also seems to be a culture of impunity when it comes to key infrastructure projects. In the next few weeks, we'll be hosting in Parliament two key municipalities from the Eastern Cape. One of them is a metro, the other is a district municipality, or Tambo District Municipality, the other is Buffalo City Metro. Both of whom are critical in the provision of infrastructure, economic and social infrastructure, to key parts of the province. Having received briefings by the AG and SIU on both, the picture remains deeply concerning, something experienced by the Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs when it went on joint oversight with our committee last year. So whenever we get the opportunity, we will examine closely the amount and quality of spending on local infrastructure maintenance and renewal. We cannot grow the economy and create jobs if small family-owned businesses and startups must contend with water disruptions and impassable roads, among others. Now, let me just give, let me link to something that one of my colleagues spoke about, which is the program the government has to incentivize better governance at municipal level. One of the key requirements in terms of these trading services is that the municipalities must form or constitute or incorporate special agencies in order to deliver these services, water, energy, etc. This is fine in theory, but I urge those of you who can, even if it's last year and the previous year's audit outcomes, you can go into PMG and have a look at the city of Johannesburg. All of them, bar the theatre, the Joburg Theatre, have horrendous audit outcomes. All of them have horrendous audit outcomes, including the city of Johannesburg itself. So formulating the agency on its own does not solve the problem. And I will shortly speak about about some of the insights that we've developed and why the focus must be on other key areas underpinning what we believe should be the right performance by municipalities. So let me talk about general cost savings. About 2 areas of improvement that need all the state to work together, and that is project and contract management. Projects end up costing more because of poor project management on the ground and poor contract management. It is not uncommon for contractors to be allowed to miss critical deadlines and in some cases eventually be evicted after getting paid, but there is no consequent attempt to recover the funds. That puts the Treasury in an impossible position of having to allocate new funds to the same projects, sometimes to suffer recurrence. Let me give a specific example. There is a project called Nsonyeni Dam in the Eastern Cape in the OR Tambo District Municipality. The taps have been put in place, the pipes have been put in place, the water treatment plant has been put in place. There is no dam. It's been nearly a decade. Close to 400 million has been spent on that project, but we were able to park a motor vehicle where there should have been water, but there's no water. And you know what must happen again? The Treasury must reallocate funds to that project, because the contractor that was there has eventually been evicted without completing the job for a variety of reasons. This is just a microcosm of what actually happens on the ground. So when we listen to the finance minister speaking, and we ask ourselves, what is the finance minister going to do? The finance minister is not a superman or superwoman, depending on the gender of the finance minister at the time. They can't be everywhere. If municipalities are not performing, then you've got a serious problem. The economy can't grow. People don't have critical access to critical services. So much of this is caused by the employment of unsuitable people to critical management and executive positions. I am not happy that the government is just hunting for ghost workers, which is very important. What we additionally need is a skills review and audit to be prepared to redeploy or eject people who are either non-performing or underqualified for the work that they do. So all my colleagues behind me will be busy processing the various phases of this budget over the next 3 months. The Standing Committee on Public Accounts has the advantage of being able to begin its work in earnest already. Between now and Easter, we'll have a combination of SOCs, government departments and municipalities on some of the topics I spoke about earlier. Transnet will be coming, I think, during the course of March as well. We're taking a briefing from the Auditor General on Transnet tomorrow. We're also working frantically to produce a RAF report, the Road Accident Fund report, which will also reveal significant needless financial leakages due to mismanagement and poor oversight. So overall, what I'm trying to say is the topic in South Africa always is how much money has been stolen. This is critically important. But if you were to quantify the amount of money that gets lost or wasted due to ill-conceived allocations, poor project management, poor contract management, no consequences for contractors who get paid and they don't do the work, that we don't claw back that money because that clause is not in the contract itself. We are going to continue to spend trillions of rand with no return, and that's 6% per annum that we need to double the economy every 12 years. Is not going to happen. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair Zibi, and to the rest of the chairpersons for very comprehensive presentations covering a wide range of topics in terms of the work that the committees must undertake following the presentation by the budget. Parliament, like I said, plays a very critical role. The budget comes before the institution as a proposal, which must be taken through a rigorous process through all these committees before it can be adopted as a budget that must be implemented by the departments so that they can deliver a wide range of services to the people of South Africa. There are prescribed timeframes within which the budget must be processed, and as the chairpersons have alluded to, public participation is a very critical element of that process, not only to hear from organized formations or academics or experts, but also the ordinary people of South Africa, the length and breadth of South Africa, because as the chairperson said, this is their budget. It is the budget which is constituted or made up of contributions from all South Africans. So it is important that they have a say and they are part of the decision-making process, consistent with the status of this institution as the People's Parliament in terms of how their financial resources must be spent. So thank you very much, Honorable Chairpersons, and this is an opportunity to engage with your good self in terms of the work that has been highlighted as the work that the committees will undertake. I also welcome the colleagues who are joining us from elsewhere in the country who could not be here physically, but they are joining us virtually. You're also welcome, and we'll recognize you as you raise your hands on that digital platform functionalities. Okay, any input, questions from the floor, starting with the physical venue? You will just be given a microphone, and then you should, starting from the front.
Thanks, Minoto. Lindsay
And then the
Dentling.
chairpersons will just note all the inputs and the questions.
Lindsay Dentlinger, Eyewitness News. Are the spending reviews, in your views, happening fast enough? When you talk about wastage and the amount of money that could be saved in the state, do you feel that these spending reviews are happening fast enough? Municipal allocations, Ms. Ndlovu, your point is taken about municipalities that can't generate enough revenue. But then how do we juxtapose what Mr. Zibi is saying about wasteful expenditure, and how do you convince Treasury to make greater allocations to municipalities when it is quite evident that they're not able to manage their money, and Treasury is already taking steps to withhold money? So what is your proposal for, if there were to be greater allocations, that municipalities manage this money better? Mr. Zibi, the budget is fairly silent on the RAF, and you've just mentioned that you've concluded this inquiry. Are you concerned that we do not still know the true extent of the liabilities and its impact on the national balance sheet? Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Who was next? Okay.
Hi, Theoden from Independent Media. My first question to Mr. Maimane. So we've heard from the ad hoc committee that from the witnesses that a lot of workforce is lost because of non-competitive salaries. Just in terms of the committee, will this be something that you will be looking at and sort of bringing up with the minister himself? And then also just to Honorable Ndlovu and Mr. Zibi, we do know that the AG said that municipalities continue to spend a lot of money on financial managers and audits to assist them, in preparing the audits. She said that in 2023-2024, 219 municipalities spent a combined 1.47 billion on financial reporting consultants. Now, will this be something that you will pay a closer look to in sort of the coming year as well, given that you'll be having a lot of municipalities before you? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ebra. Okay, you are covered. Thank you. The third one. I think this side.
Hi, Chairs. Thank you for the presentations. I'm Sawiso Malefe from the UWC Young Investors Program. So my question is on the side of participation from the public. How can we get more youth participating within the budget process, formation phase? Because as a youngster myself, government, parliament, it all seem like monoliths, and as a member of youth, it feels like our voice does go unheard. So how can we break that stigma around it down so that we can get feedback from the younger people? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the next hand is at the back.
Good morning, Chairs, and to my colleagues. My name is Liz. I'm coming from Zbonele FM, it's a community radio station that is based in Khayelitsha. To Dr. Maswanganyi, when you talked about the transport, I'd love to know is there any plan or is there anything that the committee has prepared for the public transport, especially the taxis, because we do understand that in Cape Town, it seems as if there's a problem between the public transport and private. It will be taxis. Each and every year, if you're going to talk about people that are coming to work, most people are using taxis from the places that we're staying at, but it seems to be problems every time. Dr. Maimane, to you, my question will be, what do you think about the wall if we are going to talk about the safety and maybe soldiers is not really a solution? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank
you so much. Good morning. Thank you so much. Daniel Peter Elnada from the Budget Justice Coalition. My question is particularly for Ms. Ndlovu, but I'm happy for any of the other chairs to answer as well. We really appreciate every year that Parliament in particular, and especially these standing and select committees, show a continued commitment to public participation and engagement, and we've always had very positive experiences with your committees. In that light, we're really hoping to hear from you, Ms. Ndlovu, and especially from the other committees as well, what your reaction is to the Minister's repeated comments, Minister of Finance's repeated comments, essentially, in our view, disparaging public participation, referring to people who are marching and have nothing else to do and no other responsibilities and going home and drinking Heineken. We're very concerned that this is not the first time that we've heard the minister referring to the public. We're not sure whether he's talking about unemployed people or civil society or the public at large, about not having important responsibilities. And I can tell you that as the Budget Justice Coalition ourselves, we put a lot of work into the submissions that we make. And our concern is that by the time the budget reaches the parliamentary stage, as seriously as the parliamentary committees take it, and we do as well, it's often very difficult to make substantive changes in the interests of the public at that point. And so the process leading up to it is calcified because of an exclusion of civil society from the budget process. So we're really just hoping to hear, ma'am, your responses to the minister, whether you echo these, and if there is an intention from Parliament to exercise greater oversight over the executive for their approach towards participatory democracy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Alia from the Alternative Information and Development Center. So my question is, what in the budget is progressive if 7 billion rand of personal income tax relief alone is given to people earning above 500,000 rand per year? And at the same time that this happens, main budget non-interest expenditure is decreasing by 1% after taking into account the effect of inflation. So while 60% is allocated to the social wage, the total component of government expenditure as a share of GDP, but also is becoming smaller and smaller over time, and this erodes constitutional rights. It is said that Parliament is the final decision maker on the budget, but the Joint Standing and Select Committee recommended in a previous report that frontline services in basic education, health, social protection, development, policing, and local government are not eroded in real terms per capita. While we do not yet know about headcounts on a provincial level in terms of health and education, what we can see in the estimates of national expenditure is that the headcounts for police over the next 3 years are remaining flat. So if these recommendations are being made by the committees and it's not being taken up by Parliament, what does this mean for the role of Parliament as the final decision maker of the budget, and also for the process of public participation? I'll leave that there for now. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. My name is Siba, and I'm from Youth Capital. It's a pleasure to be here. I think my question is for everybody, I think, because we were talking about social spending. A lot of talk has been about social spending. And one of the things we noted in the budget speech, rather, is that there were programs that were noted that were not working as they were supposed to or intended, and some of them received funding cuts as of the budget this year. I think, to quote Enoch Godongwana, there was also a mention of the skills development levy paid by employers to fund sector education and training authorities or SETAs, and the National Skills Fund have not yielded the outcomes as expected, right? And my question to that is whether or not we feel as if social spending is being prioritized, whether or not we're looking into program redesign rather than cutting these programs, because these are programs that essentially are there to serve a purpose. We live in a very unequal society, and so I'm asking, where is this leaving us as young people in this country? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other hand on the physical venue? Nothing. Okay. Any virtual platform? Because I want to take everyone, because given the number of questions, we might not come back for the second opportunity. Is there any hand on the virtual platform? The screen that is in front of me, I don't see any hand. I think it's nice that the screen is like this, because I don't have to rely on anyone to tell me whether there is a hand or not. So I see that the virtual platform is okay. Anyone who wants to take the last chance? Okay. Oh, you're already standing.
I'm ready. I'm standing and I'm ready. Good morning, everybody.
Who recognized you, Dr. Maiman? I had you interfering with my chairing responsibilities. Okay, you can go. You can only ask Dr. Maimani, because he's the one who
recognized me.
You must not ask anyone else.
Good morning, everybody. Firstly, I'd like to just make a comment around the venue that was chosen today. It is refreshing to be around this much knowledge and wisdom, and I trust that from this it will encompass and influence a lot of positivity and ideas that will contribute to the sustainability of our country, organization, and the youth. My name is Sia Dwangu, and I stand here for Zaki Zizwe, but also a member of the public. And more than anything, I think my concern is around the participation of individuals within the rural areas. If we're saying that individuals within the rural areas are unequipped, or ill-equipped rather, to participate in decision-making in the budgets that we are here sitting discussing, how are we then ensuring that the message and the call for them to participate is reaching them in such a way and within due time or sufficient time for them to be allowed the opportunity to participate, and even more than that, that they are educated on the lack of participation and what that translates to in the overall decision makings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciated all the inputs as well as the hands. I know that the honorable chairpersons have captured every of those inputs as well as the questions, and then I know, judging from experience, that they will definitely be comprehensive in dealing with those questions. No questions will be left unanswered. And I like the fact that you are almost seated the way you came. So with a slight difference this side. But I'm just going to give it to you. For there are quite a number of questions. I don't know why you are very popular today with the content that you gave. I think the content that you gave was very provocative, Chair. So once you are done, you will just hand over to Dr. Masonga, and then from one doctor to another, and then to the chairperson of the Thank you very much.
No, thanks very much, Mr. Manap. And I think, let me thank the the media houses for your progressive questions that you posed today. And indeed, the topic, my topic was provocative and deliberately did that. One, I want to acknowledge some of the stakeholders present here who have been participating on the processes, on the public participation. I think the two, unfortunately, forgive me, I might forget others, the name, but I only remember the faces as they do the presentation to the committee. Maybe it's one of the things that you can assist our young youth here to tell him how do you access. But I must indicate that it has been publicized on the website of Parliament. Then you just have to, maybe from here, get an assistance, maybe just to show you how to get that. But every individuals, that is why we want young people like yourself to participate, and we want to listen to you. As we indicated on the speech, to say it's only a fraction of communities that are participating. And fortunately, it was going to be closed, I think, this week. We have extended. So now you have an opportunity to also just submit your proposals with regard to that. The other question was with regard to what is it that we make sure that there's accountability. You know, there are processes that are put in place. Obviously, we will not do what members will want us to do, or the public will want us to do. We are doing what the community and the public. So when Mr. Zibi is saying we are making sure that the institutions are accountable, we invite them when we realize there is something wrong that this institution or this municipality is doing wrong, based on also the petitions and the submissions that we hear from individuals, the stakeholders. We are inviting them to say, can you come and account why this money is not budgeted, or why this money is not spent. And also, the National Treasury is also playing its role to look at, no, but we are looking at the system, because that's what they told us, that even from their side, they can look at the system to say, this municipality A is not utilizing this budget. Then they will take that budget, but our worry also on that one is to say, there are two options. Why do you take the budget and take it to another municipality? Other than you go to the municipality and say, we want you to spend this budget, because we can see, isn't it there are oversight that you are playing? There are many committees in Parliament. You have the NA and the select committees. Some of us, we go to the ground, because there's a processes. And we are saying, you return the money, you don't spend this money, but looking at the ground, there's nothing that is happening. And I can tell you, ma'am, in our oversight visit, we have seen a lot of things that, as a committees, we made recommendations. Because you find that there is a situation whereby there is a stadium, they said there's a stadium has been finished, budget has been spent, but when you go there, there's no stadium. You understand? So it's not that those things we are not talking about as parliamentarians. We are talking about it, and we are also giving it to the ministers and the committees that are responsible for making sure that the responsible municipalities are accountable to that. And the other part, I think I was trying to cover up most of the questions at once. And there is another one, you know, as the Constitution of South Africa guarantees the right to protest, right, to everyone. However, from my understanding, the minister of Finance was referring to people who protest outside Parliament. Protest outside Parliament. You are just next to the Parliament. You are not far, you are not in... No, let me finish. You'll come in. We are talking about people who protest outside the Parliament. We are here next to the Parliament. You are in Cape Town. You get access to participate with the committees, and why don't you come and make an appointment or make a request for you to raise your views? So those are the things that we are saying. We are here in Parliament because things, as I indicated, municipalities are in the cold face of service delivery. So things are happening on the ground. Here we are taking the report, like yourself now, is one of the public participation when you ask questions. You see, we are saying, what is it that we need to do? Now there is a question of saying, I as a young person, I don't have access to participate. It's one of the critical issues. How do we assist you? Now we are assisting you. After this meeting, I expect you to be part of those who will be contributing in the committee, because obviously you've got something that needs to be listened to. And the last one is borrowing from Mr. Zibi. There must be strict checks and balances, consequence management and accountability on delinquent managers and contractors. These checks and balances must be infused into the contract from inception so that monitoring becomes an easy exercise. So I think you understand what does this thing coming from. Currently, we have the construction mafias, and you know about it. You know about it. So sometimes when, as politicians, we talk about these things, it is you also who are protecting them. We want to justify, to say, no, it's not construction mafias, they want business. But they are construction mafias. Why are they stopping the project? Because we are saying we want economic growth. So those are the things that all of us, we are saying, we want the assistance from all the stakeholders. And we must make sure that at the end of the day, we are leading. We want to lead with you, not on our own. Because with you, it means you gave us the problem, we go there as a parliamentarians, we take a decision. And you'll be able to say, I own up to that decision. At least I was able to raise it and they listened to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Program Director. Building on what Honorable Ndlovu has already touched, the issue of public participation. Parliament is built on, I think, 2 or 3 legs. But the main responsibility of Parliament is to make laws. That's what it is. Because we have the 3 arms of government. It's the legislative, where we are. It's the executive, where the president is with his ministers and deputy ministers. And it's the judiciary that interpret laws. So the core responsibility of Parliament is to make laws. Above that is to make sure that the public participate adequately. That's what we call participatory democracy. So our democracy in South Africa is built on 2 legs, participatory and representatives. We are here as representatives. You have elected us in 2024. But does not mean when we are here, we just do things alone. That's when the element of participatory democracy comes in. And Parliament has adopted what we call a public participation model. You can check even here in the library. They can print it out for you before you leave here. How the public is supposed to participate in the decision making. And there are steps that are outlined Like now when we process budget, now that the minister has tabled budget, remember budget at the end is a legislative tool. It's not just a speech. The speech summarizes budget. The actual budget is what is contained in those bills. Appropriation bill that is going to Honorable Maimane, division of revenue again, which we are going to adopt later, the tax bills that come to the Standing Committee Finance. That's what constitutes a budget, which are processed first through the NA and the NCOP, then the President signs to make sure that they are laws of the Republic. So throughout that process, you make sure that the public participate, and not just participate, but it must participate adequately. For an example, this coming week or so, we are not going to have public participation in terms of our processes. We have postponed that. Why? Because we will not be able to publicize or advertise the call for public hearings in time. So we don't just do things for the sake of compliance. We make sure that the adverts are out there in time. We inform the public. Today, the platforms are many. And make sure that when they come and participate, they are also given ample time. They don't just speak for 1 minute and say, hey, that's all. Alia is here. She can, because she's a regular to our meetings, she can teach you about that. I don't remember public participation where she does not participate. Of course, representing an organization and as a young person. So that's what the public participation model is all about. You had Honorable Zibi is calling RAF and everybody. But the public also have to be involved, because whatever we are doing it on behalf of the public. Hence, we are called public representatives. We don't represent our private companies. So there's no decision that is tabled either in the NA or in the NCOP without an element of public participation. And we don't do it alone. We work together with the NCOP. We work with our colleagues in provinces and also in local government. Remember, there's only government in South Africa is unitary state. So there's interdependence of the three spheres of government. There's no sphere which does things alone that other side. Hence, you had Honorable Zibi saying is inviting colleagues from municipalities in the Eastern Cape to come here. We don't summon here to give them instructions. It doesn't work that. We take decisions together with them. They are not our juniors. They are our colleagues. I think you must understand it that way. The fact that they are councillors doesn't make them to be junior to members of parliament. No. They've been elected by the public to represent their sphere of government. So for them to come here, we are able to appreciate the issues that they are facing, because here we pass budget. We don't know how they implement it at some stages. Then we are able to take informed decisions. Because if you don't bring them here in parliament to understand what they're doing, you end up taking a wrong decision in the NA and in the NCOP. The element of youth, there's no country which has got a future without the youth. Every country that is serious about itself must invest heavily on its young people. All of us were youth before. We are where we are because there was an effort to invest in us. And this government also, for instance, a year or two, we passed a Public Procurement Act as this committee. And amongst other chapters in that act, we made sure that there's an element of youth, women, and people with disability. And we have put it to the minister that when he puts together the regulations, the issue of set-aside should be there. Because young people have got a challenge to access credit from the market. You go to the bank as a young person, they will ask you some difficult question. You want money, but they still want a guarantee or a security. Do you have a house? Where will a young person get a house from? Because he stays with his parents. But he has got a noble idea to start business. So some of those issues, that's where the state has to come in. Because you can't expect young people to have collaterals like somebody like me who's working here. And many other regulations which were making life difficult for youth to get into an area of business. Small business department, we had a meeting with them last week, Honorable Stella Ndabeni, that where are you coming in terms of young people, including those in rural areas of Malamulele, Dimbaza, and wherever. And she promised us that there are programs that she's going to roll out to make sure that young people are taken care of, above those that are rolled out by NYDA YES program. I think the YES program is in the office of the president. And from time to time, the president comes here quarterly to come and account. And I don't remember the president coming to parliament and not being asked a question about the youth development, which is a very critical matter. Of course, other programs will be those of in school and universities, NSFAS. Like for instance, the issue of Ekurhuleni University is a serious matter. And young people of Ekurhuleni, you saw them taking even to the streets and say they want to invest. Because government promised them that you invest. And we will hold government accountable, us as members of parliament. Because any country that is serious about development must develop young people through education and invest more. Now we live in another world which we were not there. You see how AI is developing. Every day there's a new thing. Me, I can't cope with some of those AI things. We have to make sure that our young people are equally competent with those young people in Japan, in India, and wherever, where those countries are investing more on technology. Countries in the East are investing lots of resources on technology. And for South Africa to develop, it must also invest more in the digital infrastructure. We are no longer living in the Iron Age and Stone Age. And, you know, during our time, there were telegrams. I think Honorable Zibi will remember. From the post office, you have to walk long distance, written by your father, and the letters written to our mothers. My father was working in Johannesburg. There were no phones. You have to write a letter after a month or two. And we could not open those letters. Take them and somebody elderly will have to read because the things contained there, some were too big for us. So we are no longer in that age. We live in a different age. And the state, through relevant department, and you had Honorable Maiman talking about Centec, we will follow that money that is being invested in Centec to make sure that it goes into digital infrastructure investment. And young people should be in the forefront, like in those countries that I've mentioned. Before I sit down, there was a question about transport. Transport is quite very, very important, more especially public transport. I've been in that space before. If you look at reports, including those of the World Bank, commuters, more especially low-income commuters, spend more than 57% of their income on transport and electricity, and they are left with nothing. And that's a problem. We know it's a special problem that has been created by apartheid, by design, that black people should stay far away from town. They were staying here at District 6. They were pushed away, and so on and so on. Be that as it may, we have the railway system. As this parliament, we have been pushing for investment on PRASA and what is its sister company, Transnet. Because for Transnet to be very strong, it's important for the economy. Take the minerals to Richards Bay, to Durban, wherever, and take trucks out of the road. There are too many trucks today. It's very difficult to drive on the freeways. So that strategy of from road to rail, we must see it being implemented. That's on the freight side. But on the commuter side, if you look at the budget, you can Google it there. Lots of billions have been allocated last week by the minister to PRASA. And to move from a minimum of 70-something million to 400 plus passengers per year using the trains. Because trains are highly subsidized. Remember, taxis are not subsidized in South Africa. It's only the buses and the trains. But the trains are more subsidized because they are government. And many people from Khayelitsha to town, from Soweto and wherever, Dobsonville, where Honorable Maimane come from, because I have got family members in Dobsonville. They rely on the train to Johannesburg, to the city center. So we have always been emphasizing that the trains, there should be more investment, and we want to see more trains back. If you drive here on the N2, going back to where I stay in Laboria, I see a lot of rail infrastructure dilapidated and destroyed. We believe that PRASA should bring back its security component to make sure that there is order and no vandalism of infrastructure. Because you want to rebuild the coaches and locomotives, but the railway line has been stolen by somebody else. So the element of securing public infrastructure, not only by police, but even the communities themselves, they must make sure that they look after the infrastructure. So the issue of transport, you are quite right, including electricity. Now, low-income earners are spending a lot. Electricity now is very expensive. And we will invite the Minister of Electricity to come and explain to us that we are out of the woods in terms of load shedding. Now there's something called load reduction and so on. And power stations are now operational. What are the problems? I saw more than 80 billion being allocated to municipalities for free basic services to make sure that the poor are cushioned. So those are some of the programs, social protection programs to cushion the poor. But what is critical at the end is to make sure that the economy grows, it creates jobs, and also create wealth for the country. Thanks very much, Program Director. And over to you, Dr. Moima.
Thank you, Dr. And I'll be quite brief in responding to some of the questions. I think I can cluster some of them that were directed at me. The first one spoke to the question of public participation. No law in this country can pass unless there's sufficient public participation. Now the debate then becomes what constitutes sufficient. So just so you know, the fiscal framework has to be adopted within 16 days post the tabling of the budget by the minister, or the proposals, budget proposals. The division of revenue bill must be adopted within 35 days of that, and the complete budget must be done so 4 months post. So in the light of all of that, on the 24th of March, we will be in KZN. When I was entrusted with the role of chairing the Standing Committee on Appropriations, I was very intentional to say that public participation cannot be, if you like, an elite sport. Those who have internet can write a volume of submissions. It must be an opportunity where ordinary citizens can come and raise what is their issue. So last year we went to Limpopo, we were in a community meeting there, traditional leaders, young people came, they make representation. You'll remember on the VAT debate. And it was on the basis of their submissions that we had to then oppose the VAT question, because I still maintain that last year we wouldn't have had this budget version 1, version 2, version 3, had it not been for the fact that, let them be tabled, the law, the Money Bills and Related Matters Act, gives Parliament the right to amend the budget. So if there are issues you do not like in the budget, they're amendable on that basis. So that was an opportunity. And I know many people might say there are many green shoots, but the key turning point last year in why the budget was able to be passed and that this year we've alleviated the 20 billion rands proposed tax was inherently because Kaizer Chiefs won the Nedbank Cup, which strengthened the rand at the time. So I just think these are important issues. Those who are celebrating this weekend must do so cautiously, because the implications might be profound further down the road. But I thought that was... The second issue is, I think I was asked a question about this issue of the social wage. Has this one underpinning question which worries me profoundly, which is part of the global trend, is this question of affordability. Our colleagues have raised administered costs, the impact of energy, but also don't forget the fact that infused in the budget is a fuel levy that is going to make South Africa's fuel cost higher. I think South Africa pays more higher for fuel than any other country in the SADC region, but it also means that by implication, that as an administered cost might have some inflationary pressures on households. Now, most households, household income in this country sits nominally at about 4,900. The affordability of basic food costs and other costs means that that raises up to 5,900 or so. So you can appreciate that for many households in South Africa, particularly households that are earning what is the minimum wage, are now sitting at a point where they will face an affordability crisis. So I do think this question about the fuel levy needs to be a question that must be debated for in public. Because last year we debated VAT. I do think this year we must debate this fuel levy question, because I think it's going to have implications. I think the other question that was raised to me was whether I raised these questions about levies. You put the decrease in terms of the bracket creep, the 7 billion rands allocation. I think that is an important provision. Otherwise, what it eventually means is that if you're a teacher, a nurse, whatever, if there are no adjustments for bracket, means any increase that you get in your real wage can be eroded for lack of a bracket creep. But I think if you understand the broader economic infrastructure of South Africa, South Africa's growth is stimulated really by disposable income from household expenditure. So household consumption drives a significant component of that. So therefore, when you don't adjust the brackets accordingly, it means that disposable income is limited. Fair enough, we're enjoying low interest rates, which means disposable income is quite high. But the dilemma behind that is that you don't want to burden consumers more with them not being adjusted for other credits, so they pay more for medical aid. So their real income is actually eroded. So that was the point I was also trying to make, even on the affordability question. I do think when you are trying to adjust and deal with what households need to go through, we really need to rethink how we do our social wage expenditures, especially around welfare. The SRD grant has been extended, but SRD is 370 rand relative to a food basket of 590 rand. So we have to think about what income goes into households. That's why I'm always one fighting hard for saying we must reform how we deal with grants. The age-old of just targeting individuals is an archaic model. I think Brazil have shown us a way. Other jurisdictions are starting to rethink what does it mean to add income to a household. So, as the Standing Committee on Appropriations, the items really to look out for is obviously that you curb debt so that it doesn't crowd out other expenditure. You invest in growth, and somebody, I think it was from Zbonel, you asked about the taxis. One of the things that I always find tricky to accept is that the IPTS, which is the Integrated Public Transport grant that was allocated to municipalities, some of it has been withdrawn. The dilemma behind that is that if you are living in Kabeja, your crisis is that once that grant is withdrawn, some of it was for taxi rehabilitation. It hasn't been used to its fullest effect. So you've got taxis now going around that some of them are illegal. So it wasn't being used to its fulfillment. And so once you withdraw that and you don't compensate on the other side by making sure you fund for other better public transport systems like buses, like trains, you can end up with consumers having to face the cumulative burden that Dr. Maswanganyi raises, which is that your proportion of your income, or a significant proportion of your income, is spent on public transport rather than on disposable income on other things. So what we have to do, and this is what we have to look at, is that investment in public transport can't just be for infrastructure build. It needs to ensure that the trains run on time, the buses are available, and the taxis, which are a significant employer in the country, but also a need for subsidy to make sure that they get they get around effectively, so that citizens don't have to be spending a significant amount of money. I worry that taxis are going to go up next year. I worry that electricity is going to go up, which means the affordability question is on the table. So I think those were questions that were directed at me. I don't think there's another one. Cancer. To Dr. Maswanganyi, who says letters were read by parents. They used to conclude them by ndihela kwel, which means that, etc., etc. Oh, on the wall? And as it pertains to that, the reason, you mean the war in the Middle East at this point in time? Oh, the wall. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. Sorry. Firstly, I think South Africa does not need a wall. Our history, in essence, from what I understand of that N2 wall project, I believe that the practice of building a wall and locking up other citizens is a failure to deal with effective policing. I disagree vehemently with the idea of the wall. I think it entrenches apartheid spatial networking. I really do. I certainly think that it is a poor way of answering the question, who can go inside the community and who can go outside the community? In my humble opinion, if you want to fight crime in communities, rather than deploying the army, we should devolve certain policing functions so that what Metro Police do, they are not spending their days checking license discs. We must add them to the SAPS, increase intelligence, and make sure they're available in townships so that we amend the law as to what a Metro Police can do so that you give them powers for investigatory powers. Once you achieve that space, you increase the force, you add a degree of private security that is brought on the table, you make sure you can arrest the crooks. The issue at core is that people do it. Not everybody in South Africa is a criminal. And not new criminals are being born every day. It's that the same criminals repeat the crime and get away with it. And in communities, by the way, they know who the criminals are. They know where drugs are being peddled. They know all of those things. But because the SAPs lack capacity and the Metro Police don't always have investigatory powers, we don't devolve it effectively so that we deal with it. I think the wall is a symbol of the past. It should not be something we should advance in South Africa today. What we ought be doing is think about a different crime strategy. So my broader view on public finance and all of these things and municipalities is that we are scared to make reforms. I think the question somebody asked me was, do I think TAS is working fast enough? TAS can do some minor adjustments. It cannot do proper deep analysis. So if you're not willing to let go of agencies, if you're not willing to let go of certain provincial functions and provinces, if you're not willing to do that, you are going to attend to the small in trying to address some big systemic issues. And I would ask that rather than us thinking about TARS, we must think about proper reform. I'm not saying TARS is a bad idea. It must be there. Of course, you must review whether you're getting bang for buck. But really, I do think South Africa needs reform. Otherwise, we can tinker on ghost workers. We've already got in the political world, a ghost worker who's sitting at home as a minister of police. That's a ghost worker, in effect. Let's deal with the issue. But when it's said and done, really, what we need to do is be aggressive at dealing with the structural or the way our structure of government works, so that every rand is spent being used for the people. And so if you're going to cut these agencies, cut all of these things that were established. You know, if you were to cut agencies, yes, fair, it's 177,000 people that we talk about. But in the end of the day, the fiscal resource behind that could be unlocked for the benefit of other programs, so that you're not dealing with building walls, but rather you can deploy effective detectives who we have a deficit of 120,000 of. This is the thing that we need to focus on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I noted that Honorable Maswanganya made a comment about my age, because he said the two of us remember when our parents used to send letters. I do. I do. As a matter of fact, so you are correct. I don't see Lindsay here, but she asked a question about spending reviews, whether they are happening fast enough. I think before speed, we also need to think about what to review. There is a habit in South Africa that if something has always been there, it must always stay there. And so we must put pouring money into it. So the review must be about whether the money is producing the outcome that program is intended. And if it doesn't work, then we must change legislation. We must change the mandate. We must alter the mandate so that it does the right thing. So that is the first thing. The second thing is that we must also be prepared to take tough decisions. I have said time and again, sometimes we receive people in our committee who are responsible for hundreds of millions and sometimes billions of rand who really shouldn't be managing that size of balance sheet. You will never get the outcome that you're looking for when you give money to somebody who won't know how to use it effectively, and we do it all the time and expect a different outcome. It simply doesn't work like that. That is why earlier I was talking about being prepared to look beyond just this previous financial year, looking at other factors. Since she asked about the road accident fund, I will make an example about the road accident fund, but let me answer the question specifically. The budget is not silent on the road accident fund. It actually allocates an additional 7 cents to the road accident fund per litre. That is a heck of a lot of money, firstly. And secondly, and that has to come out of the pockets of South Africans who are already squeezed. So that is the first thing. But here's the thing about spending reviews. The mandate of the Road Accident Fund, the manner in which it is conceived, and how the RAF Act says it must operate is delusional. It doesn't work. So it is effectively an insurance scheme. You can get paid damages. You can claim for future loss of income. You can also claim for future medical expenses. This is fine. The problem is, from a financial modeling point of view, it's not matched by what insurances do, which is to adjust your premiums. So the funding model is wrong. And the mandate doesn't work in respect of it in comparison to the way that the entity is funded. So speaking of expenditure reviews, what do? You leave this thing as it is and pretend that you can make 50 billion, cover 150 billion rand worth of responsibilities. It's not going to happen. And so that is why I'm saying we have this habit of thinking that if something is broken, we must just never change it. Let's just pour more money into it so that it can somehow produce an outcome. So I would have dealt with the road accident fund question. The financial reporting consultants, it is a particularly bad problem. And it is caused once again, by people who don't have the capacity to manage the portfolios for which they've been appointed. Let me make some specific examples so that we get the point. We often have people, we sometimes have people appointed as a chief financial officer because they're a chartered accountant. A chartered accountant with 5 years experience, having worked in one area of finance, is not the same as a chartered accountant with 18 years experience, having worked in management accounting, in cost accounting, in auditing, etc. That person can be a chief financial officer, not any CA. But you know what? Somebody's a CA, make them a chief financial officer. And so we had somebody in our committee who was a chief financial officer of the Road Accident Fund, who did not know who sets accounting standards for the public service in South Africa. She had no clue. But that person was a chief financial officer. So we can scream and call ideological names, all of those things. If you can't get the basics of governing, you will not get the outcome. And that's an error we make persistently in South Africa. And hope to get a different outcome. It just never comes. I do want to ask about the question you raised, ma'am, about the tax break. I hope I'm getting you accurately. 500,000, a tax break of 7 billion, I think, to people earning 500,000 rand. Okay, there are some structural issues here, which I think you and I may agree on, right? So let's think about the people that earn 500,000 rand in terms of what else they're likely to be dealing with. So let me give you another real example. So currently, because we've announced that we might be bringing Buffalo City Metro to Parliament, right? My TikTok is littered with comments. People get taxed at the income level by Minister Enoch Godongwana. Once they've been taxed at that level, they may actually not qualify if they've got 2 teenagers, 19 and 17, who are going to university. They might not qualify for NSFAS. They fall in the gap. They've got to look after them. Then they have to face a municipality that charges them exorbitant rates because it needs to cover network services losses like water, electricity, and so on. So people have got debts with municipalities that exceed 50, 60, sometimes over 100,000. And I've got on my phone people sending me their municipal bills. And I can go on. And these are the people who fall late on their credit cards, on their bond repayments, and so on. What I'm trying to say is that on the surface, it might appear like an immoral thing to do. But people who earn 500,000 rand, a household that has got an income of 500,000 rand, or a person who's got an income of 500,000 rand with black tax, is squeezed. So we've got to ask a different question. And that is, how do we lower the cost of living for people? That's the question. Taxing them more doesn't solve these underlying issues that I'm talking about, which cause a high cost of living. So what would we do sometimes? We will call, and it is, right? But when we've got to give the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa additional money so that there can be more trains, and I was a journalist, it's called a bailout. It's a dirty word, it must not be done. But the actual difference in money terms from somebody who is going from Naledi to Park Station with a taxi and on a train on the same day, the one is 18 rand, the taxi 80 rand every day. So what problem do we want to tackle in order to get what we can term a progressive outcome? That's the question. But the discussion around financial allocations in South Africa is often vulgar, zero-sum game. And I'm not saying you're being vulgar, I'm just saying when we all vulgarize it, it's, no, this is a bailout. don't do it. Okay, but there are people who need public services, right? I spoke to everybody about that dam that I was talking about, right, in the Eastern Cape. Now, we can scream all we want at that municipality. 42,000 people still don't have water. All they know is that they don't have running water. And unfortunately, the finance minister must reallocate that money again. I hate it when that happens. But somebody will say, why are we giving money to these municipalities again so they can waste it, right? So what I'm trying to say is we do need to get to a point where, and I always say this, we must look at budgets holistically. Otherwise, we solve one problem, we create another problem. The final example I want to make is around sin taxes, and I'm possibly an outlier in this. The problem with sin taxes is that you get to a point where the reward of non-compliance far exceeds compliance. Let me give you an example. A cigarette, I think, costs about 8 cents to make. I don't know what the sin tax is. It's like a lot of money, right? Hey, listen, it's much easier for me to say my truck with cigarettes has been hijacked and sell those cigarettes at 200% profit without paying the duty, because I can afford the fine. This is what happens. But you know what? Every year we increase in taxes, but the non-compliance grows accordingly, which means the amount of money that is collected comparative to each year actually just doesn't make that big of a difference in any case. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, we need to get the progressive outcomes, but they need us to be prepared to take difficult decisions, like placing municipalities that don't perform under administration. You can tell me to finish the 100 meters in 15 seconds, I still won't. I'm not talented enough, I'm not young enough, and I haven't had the training. And this is some of what we're doing. The final thing I want to say, to agree with what you're saying with regards to you mentioned headcount. So, and I like again to give live examples. I was at Grey Hospital. I've been told about other hospitals. There is nobody to attend to the mortuary at Grey Hospital. There are supposed to be 7 porters, there are 3. The 3 also double at the mortuary. The place is supposed to be cleaned at the grounds once a week. It's cleaned once a month, so it looks like a dump. There's no telephone at the security gate there. I can go on and on. Bishop Hospital is like that, Frontier Hospital is like that, etc., etc. What do I want? I want a public hospital that looks like a Life Healthcare hospital, where people can go and not pay. That's what I want. But you know what? In South Africa, everything is important, so we must spend money on everything. We don't want to make choices about what we're going to spend money on and what is not a priority. Because when it's time to do spending reviews, we don't want to choose. Don't touch my thing because it's close to me. Now I'm giving a lecture, but it's done. So what I'm trying to say is that we often have the wrong conversation around budget time. It's incredibly frustrating because we will always remain stuck with the same problems that we have. But I'm hoping that this culture can change. I just want to say in the finance minister's comments, if he indeed said that, I will talk to him. Yes, I think he needs to publicly say that he changes his mind about that comment. I didn't hear it, but him and I are going to speak, and hopefully he will change his mind publicly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Zivi. Thank you to the Honorable Chairpersons for the presentations and the engagement. Thank you to members of the media and the stakeholders for your attendance and for the questions that you have put forward. We have been here for 2 hours. The engagement is not done. It's not done. The chairpersons are available after this. There is lunch. Can I finish? Yes, because if you raise a hand when a person is talking, it means they are out of order. You are raising a point of order. So I will hear you, but I'm trying to respond to say that we allocate these sessions for 2 hours. You will see that I did say that when you were making comments and you were asking questions, I did not put you under any strict time management. I gave you all the opportunity to ask and to make input. So I didn't even time you. When the chairpersons were responding, I did not time them as well. I said that they must be comprehensive and ensure that no question is left unanswered. So where I might be out of order, which is a point of order that I will receive and accept, is where you say that there is a question that they have missed. So if they have not missed any question and all the questions are responded to, I'm saying that this is not the last of the discussions. Discussions are continuing. They are here. We are inviting you to lunch at the Old Assembly restaurant. You will be directed to the lunch. It's always better when you discuss while eating, rather than to discuss while hungry in a library. You know, because here we are not allowed to eat. It's a library. We are not supposed to make noise. So we are inviting you to the Old Assembly restaurant to join the chairperson. I know that they don't have much time, but I know that they will just engage with you, greet and discuss with you some one-on-one on some of the issues that you are raising or that you wish to raise with them. So I apologize that I cannot take further questions because I did warn you that we are going to spend some time on the responses as well as give you time to ask questions. So we are thankful for your presence and for attending. We are grateful to the Chief Librarian and the staff of Parliament Library for allowing us into their space for this media briefing. This is an opportunity to showcase this important historical heritage of the nation, to show that these chairpersons and members of Parliament, when they make laws, we call it evidence-based lawmaking or evidence-based oversight. It means that they come here to research so that when the members of the executive and officials come here, they don't do circles around them. They do have all the information and they're able to ask critical questions on behalf of the people of South Africa. So thank you very much. They said that is not the last time they allow us. So next time we'll see you. Next week or in 2 weeks' time, we'll have a media briefing of the security cluster. Some of you might not be here because you are more concerned with the budget and financing. We will have stakeholders that are more interested in the issues of security of the country, so they will be with us here. So thank you very much. The press briefing is adjourned.